Welcome to Catching Up with Council. I'm your host, Dan Monroe. My guest today, Ward 14 Councilwoman Jasmin Santana. Councilwoman Santana, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Dan. It's great to be here today.
Let's look a bit at council as a whole. First of all, congratulations. This is your second term as Councilwoman.
Yes, I can't believe time flies when you're having fun.
What have you learned from your first term that you're going to bring over to your second, and maybe will you be doing anything different this term?
So I would tell you my first term was a huge learning curve, right? Like you had to learn, how the process of the legislative body, and you had to set everything up from scratch in the office, right? Like we had to do our own tracking sheet. We had to identify the needs in the neighborhood. So there was just a lot to learn, a lot of relationship building with the administration and how things worked, who to call to address issues in our neighborhood. And so I feel like my first term was all about building that framework. And so now with my second term, what I've learned is now that framework is developed, I'm able to concentrate more on policy, right? That really matters and impacts families in our city. I know the administration better, so I'm able to focus more on pressing issues that are affecting the city of Cleveland residents.
I see. So the first term, you're building that house, hammer, nails, all that wood. Now it's together, it's set, and now you're ready to move in and really get into business over there in Ward 14.
Exactly, and really work on policy that matters. And another thing, just building relationship within, my peers and council members. And I want to be able to understand what are their challenges in their neighborhood, right? And so a lot of networking and more impact.
I would imagine collaboration is key within a council. There can be differences of opinion. In the end, there has to be some kind of collaboration. Make it work.
Definitely. You're right. We don't agree on everything, which is fine, right? That's what makes a body strong. I have some brilliant peers, council members, very passionate. But when we get together on some pressing issues, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's lead issues, whether it's infant mortality, we're all very passionate about that, and we agree, at least on those types of social issues.
Now you're on the council leadership team with Council President Blaine Griffin, Councilman Kerry McCormick. You are the majority whip.
Yes.
What is the majority whip, and what is your role with that?
Okay, so first I would say that I was honored to have been chosen to be part of leadership. You could see the diversity within leadership, right? You have a Latina, and you have African American, and then first LGBT, Q leader. So I've learned a lot from them. They're brilliant. I have to say that my colleagues are brilliant. They're smart. But essentially, we set the agenda for City Council. We talk about policy, and we meet a lot with the administration about pressing issues that are affecting our city of Cleveland. So it's like as a Ward 14 council member, I'm focused on Ward 14 and the residents and the issues that are affecting my residents. But then as part of leadership, it's more of a broader, right, like conversation. And we're looking at the city of Cleveland overall and what are the issues that are affecting them.
As on that leadership team, do you also, what works for Cleveland, but do you also look out at other major cities to see what their best practices are and see if they can translate over to Cleveland at all?
Yes, I do that. Actually, that is my background. I do a lot of research, and I love data. And so, I am reading. As a matter of fact, Boston, I think they introduced something around homelessness, right? And homelessness is something that is increasing in the city of Cleveland. I'm seeing more homeless people in the area where I live. So I'm trying to look for best practice around that. And so once I get that good idea, I bring it to leadership, I bring it to my peers, and then we implement it.
Among council, there are many different committees that help make that wheel whole, I guess. You're the chair of the Committee on Workforce Education, Training, and Youth Development. Tell me about that committee. What does that do?
Well, I would tell you that's exciting too, because we didn't have that committee. I know we had the Workforce Committee, but under President Blaine Griffin's leadership, he added the education and then the youth development. So honored to chair that committee. And what we're trying to identify is what are all the resources and the partners that are out there that work on workforce, that work on education and youth development. We know crime is high, right? And we know that the ages of the people that are doing the crime are between 17 and 23, right? So is it jobs that they're in need of? Is it trauma that they're experiencing? Like, why is this crime happening in the city of Cleveland? And so we've just brought, we brought CMSD to the table, which hasn't happened. We brought YOU, which work with giving youth jobs and
Youth Opportunities
and youth
Unlimited.
opportunity. Yes. So we have PACE, which is a great job that had, a great program that just started. And this is within the schools, right? And they're giving kids training and placing them in jobs. And so then you have Say Yes. Say Yes is a great opportunity. You go to college for free, and the only thing you do have to be a CMSD student, school. A CMSD student. I wish this was open to all City of Cleveland kids, but it's only for CMSD schools. But anyhow, there's a lot happening, and I think through this committee, we're able to identify all those resources and all those opportunities. And right now, we're at a point where we're just trying to align it. Like, how do we align? How do we identify gaps? How do we fill those gaps? And how does the city support these organizations to better serve our families and children?
So what are some of your long-term goals for this committee?
So right now, what we've heard a lot is, pay increase. $10, right, is not enough for a youth to get paid, So is it increasing it to $15, right? We're trying to identify areas where youth are not working. So we need to do a better job on community outreach and community engagement in those areas. So right now, really, we're in the research place, so I don't have a set goal, but we're moving towards that.
Goal. Well, goals are to set goals, I
Yes.
guess. That's great. Looking at council, it's a great year for council, a great start with 3 new freshman women coming on board, 5 women on council right now. How does that set or change the dynamic of council, and how are all 5 of you working together? Maybe doing different projects together, or?
Yeah. So since it's pretty new, right, and they were a lot of them were just elected. Right now we're building relationship. We're getting together. We're identifying what are those aligned policies that we want to work on. One of the things that we're all very passionate about is maternity leave. The city of Cleveland doesn't offer maternity leave right now, which is something that a lot of organizations do offer. And parents need this. They need time to be with their kids, after giving birth. So that's one of the things that we're working on. And, Councilwoman House, she's been great working with. And we did a workshop live on Facebook around equal pay. And so we attracted, a lot of people. There are a lot of questions. And so although we don't think alike on everything, we do have similar interests, and I'm just hoping to work more with them on some women issues.
When you said earlier your first term was a big learning experience, you came in really not knowing how council worked. With Councilwoman Gray and Councilwoman House and Mauer, did they come to you and ask?
Spencer.
And Spencer,
Yeah.
I know Spencer, but I'm talking about the 3 freshmen.
Okay, yeah.
Did they come to you asking for advice? How do we start? What do we need to know? Did they lean on you a little bit?
Some, yes. I would say I didn't wait for them to ask, because when I first started, I didn't ask questions. I was trying to figure it out on my own. And so I just figured maybe they are, I assume maybe they are struggling with the same thing. So I was able to kind of share some of my experiences and give them some advice. One of them being master plan. When I first started, I didn't have, there was no vision in Ward 14. And there was so many issues, right? The need was great. And so for me, it was like, where do I start? Where do I focus? And so I met with Mayor Frank Jackson. I'm always grateful to him for this. And he was like, why don't you work on a neighborhood master plan and engage the residents, hear from them? And we did that through the pandemic, which was very difficult. We had to, do a lot of the meetings online. But we engaged a lot of residents, and we heard their needs and what was their vision for their neighborhood. And we just implemented that through the city planning, a city of Cleveland. So now I have my GPS, right? I have my focus point. And when I tell you I built that framework, that master plan is part of that. So we know where we're heading. We know we need affordable housing in the neighborhood. We know that we have a lot of alleys in the neighborhood compared to any other ward. We have 52 alleys. And so I have a lot of vacant houses sit in those alleys. So there's the overgrowth, right? It attracts crime. And so I have to find a way to clean those alleys. So anyhow, my point is with the master plan, it was something that I pride myself on, that works and is working. And so that's the type of information and advice that I've given my newer colleagues. Work on a master plan if you don't know where you're headed.
Great advice. So we've looked at council as a whole. We've looked at your humble beginnings on council. Let's zero in, if we can, to Ward 14. What are the neighborhoods that comprise Ward 14?
So we have Clark Fulton, Stockyard, Brooklyn Center. I have part of Tremont North, they call it, and then West Boulevard.
Okay. That's a good chunk of neighborhood.
Yes, yeah. It goes all the way, and then people always ask, they only think that it's like Clark Fulton neighborhood, West 25th, but no, I go from West 25th all the way to 97th and Denison. So yeah, it's pretty stretch.
There's been a lot of development in your ward, looking at some new affordable single-family homes, new housing. Talk about the housing going up right now.
Yeah, so we got over 180 mixed income apartments going up. So some by Metro Health and some on on Fulton Avenue. Metro Health, they're close to, they already broke down, they're broke ground, and they're already taking applications for families with low income for those apartments. And so we're actually taking a tour next week of these apartments. I haven't seen them inside. I've only seen the outside building, but that's pretty exciting. And then Blanket Mills, which is on Fulton, Avenue, and they're also going to have about 70 units, mixed income, but for the most part, affordable for our families. And one of the things that is very unique about these projects, that is something else that I learned, is that, the HUD guidelines and the income is still not affordable, right? The rents are still not affordable. One bedroom at $850 is not affordable for our neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, this is like a federal guideline, right? And so with these projects, we were able to negotiate, like, could you accept additional vouchers so that there are additionally, there's some additional gap funding for these apartments. So now it's like one bedroom for $550. And so that is more affordable for residents in our neighborhood. So when I tell you that these projects are affordable, they are affordable.
That is great. To welcome anyone and everyone in your ward. Anything you do is fantastic. Looking also to some big multi-million-dollar renovations and refurbishments of factory buildings that are also turning into office space and being reused where it once might have been empty and blighted. Getting some new office buildings, even some new apartments as well.
Mills. On the first floor, it'll be retail space. We're actually, I can't announce it now, but we have some discussions with a possible great partner that would be moving in there. And then we have on West 25th, there's Centro Villa 25, which is a business incubator. As you know, that Clark Fulton has 48% Latinos. But we don't have a space to call our own, to gather, to shop, right? And so for years now, for decades now, we've envisioned a mercado. A mercado is more where like businesses get together and they sell their goods at affordable rate. And you could buy your foods and, it's just a place where you feel like, full of pride and feel pride to be a Latino. And it's right down the street from where you live. So that's our, something that we've been advocating for many years. And so I'm hoping that before my term ends, that's something that we roll out. And the city has been very supportive with that project.
Well, speaking of businesses, the pandemic hit lots of businesses hard. Some didn't make it, some kind of squeaked through, but any new businesses opening up in your ward that you can talk about? Anything that's just might be new to the people who are even living there?
Yeah, so we have this business is right on the corner of 25th and Marvin. It's called Half Moon Bakery. They have to check it out. It's delicious Latino food. And a lot of the employees from Metro Health just cross the street and, that's where they eat. We have barbershops, that are new to the area. We have a center is called the Pivot Center, and it has a lot of mostly nonprofit organizations, but they have a wonderful coffee shop, Café Social, which is inside of the building. But this building has the Cleveland Museum of Arts in it, in the neighborhood. It's a beautiful, very artsy building that you would have never thought would have been in Ward 14 on West 25th. So it's newer construction on there, and it's just with Metro Health, and that Pivot Center has been a catalyst to like other development in the neighborhood. So now we're getting a lot of attention. People actually want to invest in Ward 14.
You mentioned Metro Health. That's huge in your ward, and they just went through a multi-billion-dollar renovation or even transformation. Tell us about that. How's that going with Metro Health, and where are they looking forward to the future?
Yes. So I mentioned the apartment building, right, where they're already taking applications and placing families there. And the whole goal for this project was to keep residents in the neighborhood. You know, I have 38% owner occupancy in our area. So as you know, investment is good, but it could also be a challenge because it starts displacing families, and rents start rising. So that's why that affordable housing project was very important. But they're also doing a park. We don't have parks 10 minutes away, you know, where families could take their children. So they're working on a huge green space, which also they will be breaking ground this year, but won't be done till next year. But they've taken the input of residents. So they will be putting benches, and they've talked about little walking trails, and even maybe a basketball court. So, you know, they're excited about that. And once again, I mean, once they announced all the investment, that $1 billion investment in our neighborhood, people started paying attention to Ward 14. I've been there for 30 years, and I will tell you that historically, we have not received any investment in the neighborhood. So I would say since I was been elected, I'm going to a lot of ribbon cuttings, which is very exciting.
Very exciting, very good. Well, you know, with that reinvestment, you've been a huge champion on two things I want to talk about. One is restoring homes in your neighborhood, and two, like you said, is getting new parks and fixing up the parks. Looking at the homes, tell us about that effort to restore those old homes, and you're even getting some was it the ARPA funding, American Rescue Plan Act funding. How is that all working together to bring in the new homes?
Well, going back, and I have to mention this again, the master plan has been key. Even before we got those ARPA funds, it's like we knew what was the need for Ward 14. And they're very similar to the need of the city, right? Like city, it's affordable housing, it's parks, it's help with utilities, it's eviction, you know, resources. So as far as the home, there is more investment in our area. So I don't anticipate using much of that ARPA funding specifically for Ward 14 because investors are buying those properties and rehabbing them, right? Now that we're getting investment. But there are some pockets, right? Stockyard needs a lot of love. And so working with key partners like Habitat for Humanity, Community Housing Solution, CHN to restore and renovate these blighted houses is something that I'm excited that, you know, council isn't, you know, talking about allocating these fundings for home repair and home renovations and even new construction. I mean, we've had 50 new homes through Cleveland Housing Network. And we've had 11 families that have benefited from that were residents, and now, you know, they're working their ways to, you know, owning their own home, which they've never thought that they were going to own their own home, and it's a brand new home. So, you know, these are projects that are transformational and needed, and council is aware of that, and that's why, you know, those funds are being allocated to those types of projects.
Parks. You love parks.
I love parks.
And I think years ago I was covering an opening of a park. I want to say it was in your ward where it was just a disaster zone environmentally. It was clean up, a new park. And I could tell your face was beaming. And I could tell, okay, this isn't the last park you're going to be working on. Are there new parks slated to open? Talk about the new ones that have opened. What's looking at the future of parks in your ward?
You know why I'm big on parks? Because when I had 2 kids, it was so, excuse me, it was very hard for me to take them to a local park or just walk, right, to somewhere where they could play and then give mom some time to herself. So I know how important that is to single moms, and I have a lot of single moms in the neighborhood. So yes, when I was first elected, one of the projects I worked on in Myers Pool had not seen any renovations since the early 1900s, believe it or not. And, you know, just with the support of the mayor, we invested $500,000, and now we got a splash park, right? Now we're gonna, you know, there's trees there, and we're gonna be able to do movie nights, and it just, your environment is so important, right? And it's like, a toxic environment full of litter and garbage affects our children mentally. It adds to anxiety, and their mental health. And now, mind you, a lot of these families in my ward, grew up with so much trauma. So I'm really big on beautifying the neighborhood. And so I do start with parks. And Myers Pool, it was very important for me to renovate that and just be the beginning project to all the other projects that are happening around that area. Lincoln West is getting rebuilt. New houses are being built around that area. So that takes care of that Clark Fulton area right there. Then we got Mercedes Cotner, which is all the way by 97th, right? That's a park that had not been renovated for many years. So now there's going to be a skate park, and swings for the kids and a huge, green space where families could walk. And, it's all about being able to get away and get your mind right. And green space and parks do that. And they make you feel better. And healthier, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Are you able to talk about or give us a glimpse into any other future projects on the horizon coming into Ward 14?
So I'll tell you this one I'm excited of any investment that's taking place. But yesterday, I heard of a senior development going up. We want seniors to age in place. So Metro Health is working on affordable housing on West 25th for senior citizens. So that's huge. And that's part of the master plan request. We have other parks, around Stockyard neighborhood that we are working on. We're working on new construction homes in the Stockyard area. So Stockyard area, I feel like Clark Fulton's already getting enough investment, right? Like, it's at a good place. It still needs, work in terms of there's still a lot of illegal dumping. There's still litter. There's still some blight in that area, but it's at a good place. Stockyard neighborhood is where I'm going, and Brooklyn Center is where my next focus is going to be. Brooklyn Center, very historic area, beautiful housing stock in that neighborhood. But throughout the years, many property owners have sold the houses or, they rented them, and there's a lot of crime in that area, just like it is in Stockyard. So I'm trying to help increase that home ownership in those neighborhoods, clean them up, clean those alleys up. We have a project coming up called Painting a Better Picture. So like I said, I have a lot of alleys. There's a lot of dumping. My ward is close to the transfer station. So once they get turned away, they come to Ward 14 and they do their dumping in one of those alleys. So we're constantly cleaning up these neighborhoods. So Painting a Better Picture really just takes litter and garbage and turns them into art. And so that was an initiative that I started when I first was elected. So we're in our 4th year this year, and we're going to do art murals. Clean up the weeds within concrete, which drive me insane as I'm driving down Stockyard. It's like, how does that weed get through that concrete? But just cleaning that up, I just want residents to know that I think for a long time they felt we are forgotten, right? No one cares. The government doesn't care. People don't care about us. And I want them to know that we do care. And, we want to create that sense of pride in our neighborhood. And so even though we may clean just 2 alleys out of 55, I want them to see that I'm there, I can't do it alone, and I need their help to join me and clean the area. And I do this all for the future of our kids, right? Because right now, I'm older, pretty soon I'll probably retire, but you know what? My son is there, my daughter's there. And there's a lot of kids there that I want them to feel a sense of pride of staying there and want to stay there, right? I don't want my son to move. I want him to stay in the neighborhood. And so these small efforts and events, that's the goal for that.
If I can paraphrase that, I think what you're saying is community involvement is key for a better tomorrow.
Yes, for sure. Oh, I like that slogan.
There you go.
Like it. I like it. You know what my slogan when I was first elected was? Invest in people, and then in turn they will develop communities, right? And so that's what it is I want to invest in people. I want to empower people, inspire people, so then they in turn will give back to their neighborhood and be the change they want to see, essentially.
We've talked a lot about the great reinvestment, the great new projects, the parks, everything in Ward 14. That, yeah, as we know, it's not always sunshine and roses in any ward you go into. What are some of the challenges facing Ward 14 right now?
Yeah, so I know I've mentioned this several times. Alleys, alleys is huge. I still have, still looking for a solution on that. We have a lot of drug activity in the area that we're tackling, and as you know, we're low staff with policemen, so it's very hard to tackle that. But been empowering educating residents. If you see it, report it. See it, say something about it. So that's another challenge. And families getting displaced. I mean, let's be honest, rents are rising. I mean, you can't find anything cheaper than $1,000 in a neighborhood. Where before rent was $450, $550, now it's $1,000. And so a lot of these families have lived there 10, 20 years with a certain amount of rent, and now you have to pay 50% more than what you used to pay. And so now where do they go? And I would say Ward 14 is the most affordable neighborhood in comparison to all the ones that are adjacent to it. But even suburbs now are more affordable than where we live now. So it's a huge challenge. We're not giving up on that, and that's why those affordable apartment buildings are very important. But you would say for families, they don't want to live in an apartment building, right? Yeah. They want like a townhome, or they want a home where they could work on the garden, their kids could play in their backyard. So that's where the allocation for ARPA dollars for new construction is going to be important.
Looking at crime, when we talked about the community involvement, do you have the neighborhood crime watches? Do you have the block organizations, the things like that? And how does that help?
Yeah, so we have about 12 block clubs. And, I attend, I canvass a lot. I canvass the neighborhood a lot. I do a lot of community meetings, just meeting residents where they're at. And so I bring the police officer there so that they are notified of, all the crime that's taking place in the neighborhood. I think it all boils down to residents trusting us and trusting the police and being able to reach out to them directly to put in their complaint. Right? Sometimes they felt like we're so disconnected. We don't know where to call. We don't know where to report it at. And the whole goal of these community meetings and meeting residents and knocking on their doors is to let them know, here, these are the resources that are available to you. These are the numbers where you call. And once they have that, I feel like things just change and they get better around their area.
If you were going to sell the idea of Ward 14 to someone who didn't really know what your ward was made of, what would you tell them?
Oh my God, Ward 14 is amazing. So very diverse, very rich, beautiful housing stock. And, despite some of the blight that exists, I mean, we have beautiful housing stock, very historic. Just overall, it's family oriented and it's full of culture. And now we're getting all these different restaurants. And everything's at a walking distance. So, and you have everything that you need there. You have a, anchor, institution, Metro Health. You have a hospital. We're right by the highway. We're getting more parks. We're not there yet, but we're getting more parks where it's cleaner than ever. We still got some work to do. But, there's just people there that have been there for almost, all their life, and they just love the area. And we have some good neighbors that are passionate and really care and loving. And I love to see so many kids playing on the street. That's how I grew up, and it's just great to see that there. So I would just say, with you and you live with your kids, family, you want a family-oriented place full of culture, Ward 14 is the place to be.
You mentioned a couple different Latino places for food. Is it a big Latino culture there in Ward 14, or is it all more diverse? Or
no, we have the highest concentration of Latinos in the city of Cleveland. I mean, Clark Fulton has 48% Latinos, and I'm sure there's more because after the Hurricane Maria, we got an influx of Puerto Ricans in Ward 14, but. Yeah, but you know what? We're getting refugees. I mean, we're getting, Arabs. And so very diverse. You're seeing a lot of different cultures in the neighborhood. So.
And my point to that is it really has to affect the arts, and like you were saying, the food, and just bringing a bit of their history back into the Ward 14. It's got to make it look just amazing sometimes.
Amazing. You know what? We have flags that represent the Latino like countries on Clark Avenue, and I want to add different other countries, right? Like it's very international in Ward 14, and I love that. I love culture.
Awesome, that's great. How do you stay connected with the residents of your ward?
So, oh my God, we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram. We do community meetings constantly. We have a newsletter that goes out to our resident. We do robocalls. And, we had a ward office that was, there in the middle of the neighborhood so people could just walk to our office. But I'm always on the ground. I'm always running into residents in a business or, when I'm shopping and so forth. So I would say that I'm pretty accessible.
Well, if people are watching at home and they realize, wait, I'm in Ward 14, there's a lot going on. How can they get involved? Where can they reach out to? Where can they, is there a...
You know what? I would say, and I tell people, go to Cleveland City Council, Ward 14, Jasmin Santana, like my page, and you could also send me a message via Facebook. Call our office, 216-664-4238. Email me, jsantana@clevelandcitycouncil.org. And yes, I would love more people to get involved with any cleaning efforts, just any community engagement event. I would just love to see more participation. And most importantly, get out to vote. We need to increase that voter, that voter turnout in Ward 14. It's the lowest that it's ever been. And we're really working hard to educate and empower people to get out to vote because voting is very important. Voting is their voice. So that is my spiel.
I love it. Councilwoman, thank you so much for joining me today. Councilwoman Jasmin Santana, she has a master plan and it's working. It's working in Ward 14. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you two for watching Catching Up with Council. I'm your host, Dan Monroe, and we'll see you next time.